Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Asad Lalji. I'm the CEO of Avid Learning. I'm the curator here at the Royal Opera House. On behalf of the royal family of Gondal, Ashish Doshi, Honorary Director, and myself, I welcome you to India's only surviving opera house and your city's very own cultural crown jewel. Tonight, we are graced not only by the presence of a Pritzker laureate, Swiss architect Peter Zumthor, but by the essence of his profound philosophy. As we step into an evening of architectural exploration, his eloquent words from his book, Thinking Architecture, resonates, in which Peter articulates, in a society that celebrates the essential, architecture can put up a resistance, counteract the waste of forms and meanings, and speak its own language. Every building is built for a specific use, in a specific place, and for a specific society. My buildings try to answer the questions that emerge from the simple facts as precisely and critically as we can. These words find a profound echo within the grandeur of the architectural heritage that is the Royal Opera House, one of the last remaining Baroque structures in the city. We at Avid Learning and the Royal Opera House understand the importance of curating programs to celebrate the arts, both from India and beyond, that contribute to the overall enrichment of arts and culture community. These immersive and inventive experiences showcase the best of art, design, and architecture, promote exchanges and discourses between creative industry practitioners from both countries. To this end, we have fostered meaningful collaborations with many consular representatives in this maximum city. Tonight is a continuation of our enduring partnership with the Consulate General of Switzerland in Mumbai, organized as part of the Swiss-Indian Friendship Jubilee celebration. Our first collaboration began in 2016. Last January, we presented Continuum, an evening of opera, chamber music, and sculptures, followed by the Indian Navy Band and the Swiss Armed Forces Brass Band, who joined forces for the very first time on this very stage. Last month, we presented an art salon, Art in Motion, a cinematic evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank and express my gratitude to Consul General Martin Mayer and his team, Maitri and others, for their continued support and partnership. Their efforts have been pivotal in strengthening cultural ties with our maximum city. After this video, I'm going to invite Consul General Myers to say a few words and his opening remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, Switzerland and India 75. Success stories to be continued. India signed the first friendship treaty after independence with Switzerland. To celebrate this special anniversary, the official Swiss network in India organizes 75 events and projects around the country to showcase specific achievements of Swiss-Indian friendship and our excellent bilateral relations. Peter Zumthor's visit is one of the highlights of the friendship celebrations, and it is an honor to host him here in Mumbai. Thank you, Peter, for being with us. His visit and engagements in India represent the long-standing Indo-Swiss relations that go far beyond and much deeper than diplomacy. People-to-people links play a vital role in advancing the friendship of our two nations. For today's insightful and interesting conversation about architecture and design, the iconic Royal Opera House is the fitting venue in the city, and I thank the royal family of Gondal, the Honorary Director of the Royal Opera House, Mr. Ashish Doshi, and especially my dear friend Asad Lalji, and the whole teams of the Royal Opera House and Avid Learning. And last but not least, my special thank goes to Abba Narayan Lamba, who will guide us all through tonight's talk. I thank you all for joining us today for this exclusive event, and I wish you a splendid evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Myers, and the entire Consul General of Switzerland in Mumbai. Finally, it's time for the moment we all have been patiently waiting for. As Peter Zumthor takes center stage, he will be in conversation with conservation architect Abha Narayan Lamba. Abha's role in tonight's dialogue is especially significant, given her instrumental leadership in the meticulous conservation and restoration endeavors that ultimately led to the splendid reopening of the Royal Opera House in October of 2016. This enriching conversation would unravel the intricacies of Peter Zumthor's minimalistic and innovative design practices and exploration of architectural legacy crafted by a visionary whose impact resonates across continents. In the spirit of shared heritage, the evening promises to be a celebration of beauty of architecture as a universal language that transcends borders. Thank you to our esteemed guests for being here in such large numbers. We've had an overwhelming response. Thank you to all of you who've joined us online. Apologize, we could not fit you all in here today, but thank you for the support. Please take a moment to put your cell phones on silent. And now, without further ado, please put your hands together and welcome Pritzker Laureate Peter Zumthor and Abha Narayan Lamba. Thank you very much.
Peter, welcome to Bombay and welcome to the Opera House. It's taken me 25 years working on monuments to finally get to interview a monumental architect. So thank you. We're going to have some questions today, and one question we took from the audience. But since we're sitting at India's only opera house, and we know that you have a love for classical music, my first question is, what do you see as the relationship between music and architecture? And how have you seen it through your career and your buildings?
I would like to have a relationship between architecture and music, because I sort of like both, but I think music is the higher art than architecture. My opinion, I would have liked to be a musician. I was not good enough. So here I am, okay. But architecture is also, one says, music is the art of space. The architecture is also the art of space. So sounds travel, every house has its sound. So if music is expanded to the area of, let's say, the American, John Cage, then every house is music. And you can take care of how the house sounds. So this I like a lot. But the real music has a more, as we all know, it's much more immediate than architecture in its provocation of feelings. So yes, there is a relation, but it's very far away. But in the emotions, I hope architecture also can touch.
Most people know this reading about you, but you spent 10 years working on historic monuments and sites before you began this amazing career of building architectural icons through the world. How has, especially since we're sitting here in a historic building.
I wish I would see the building, huh?
Working very closely with historic buildings, is that what we see transposed into your architecture? How has working with buildings of ancient monuments and sites that you began your career with, how has it shaped your architectural approach to making new buildings?
That's an interesting question, because I thought working for 10 years with these old village structures and other things I did studying this would enable me to make really good buildings for the context. because I've worked with the context. And then when I dared, I made the first competition, entered an architectural competition. And even my boss there was in the jury. And I ended on the last position, very shameful. So I went to look. The results, it's probably the same here. The results you can go and have a look at. I saw the first prize and saw my piece, and I realized immediately that these 10 years had sort of a little bit distorted my design direction. Before that, it was sort of in the tradition of classical modernistic architecture, more about inventing and being fresh and new and so on. And there I was way too contextual. That's why I went out in the first round. Right. But that's not the whole answer. The second part is what I learned. I learned then again, the farmers who built these villages, they built it for a reason. This was not a formal decision, no architects, nothing. They built for a reason, and there was a function, there was a tradition. That's how they built. And you could feel the directness, straightforwardness of the whole thing. And I have to go back to my first upbringing as a designer and architect in art school. Let's look at the function and the use and start it from there and take it from there. And don't go too quickly to look at forms and think we should do the same roof as the neighbor has. That's not it. That was a really good lesson.
But from that lesson, we also see in your work an osmosis, really, of the ancient primordial quality of architecture, because whether we see your buildings in the zinc mines or we see your architecture of the Vals, most of your buildings just sit in a context, and when you see those, especially the memorial to the witches, you cannot, when you're standing looking at that building, imagine any other built form on that landscape.
I take this as a compliment.
I mean it as a compliment. And is this almost eternal, timeless, primordial quality that you see in your buildings, does it have something to do with just the amount of time you spent with historic sites? And did it sort of just become a part of your architectural language?
Taking that what I just said before, that you should not copy forms. You should more copy attitudes. You should try to understand how these old things were produced. There's always a mystery. You can say it's a local material, blah, 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 blah. At the end, you don't know, but at least you can know something. And do your own thing in the same way. Don't be a farmer. Adolf Loos, maybe he said, don't dress like a farmer. You have your own interpretation of the landscape and the function and use of the things you have to do. And then leave away any kind of formal exercises. I think I'm very straightforward. I try to erase every formal addition. The word would be essential. Okay, let's be essential, essence, create a presence which resounds with what's there with the context.
So what would a Peter Zumthor design process be when you go to a site, which is the landscape? How do you feel the landscape from, because each one of us, we see around us in a city like Bombay, in our cities, most buildings built with no sense of context. And when we see your body of work, probably the largest thing that stands out is this, not just a sensitivity to the context, but a very, very deep connect with the context. What's your design process in something like that?
being connected with the new building, being connected with the urban or landscape tissue which exists is something wonderful, because what's there is history. History is stored in landscapes. And many people so learn at school history is stored on paper. And if you make a work on history, you use paper. And the ones who made the history book before also worked on paper. So from paper to paper to paper, and where's the reality? Okay, we know history, the interpretation of history changes all the time. That's okay. So I like, there's a great guy, Karl Schlögl. I will give you a book. Karl Schlögl is a historian, but he works with the houses and the cities and everything which is there, with the matter, okay? And this is the kind of history, of course, I'm interested as an architect to become part of it. But looking forward, but knowing what's behind me or beneath me. And your question was different, I know.
No, it was, it's leading to that when we see your buildings, we see a part of history in sometimes, and I can almost imagine with the Klaus Bruder chapel, a kind of a medieval, pre-Christian, almost a pagan idea of burning the logs before the construction. But it's almost evocative, both in the craftsmanship, the level of detail of the stonework in the thermal Vals, or the processes of construction, that it's almost something that's embedded in a much deeper, a sense of spirit, a spirit of place.
Second compliment, thank you.
So how do your buildings evoke those emotions? Or do you structure as an architect before the building is built? Do you envision the kind of emotion that you are putting out through that building, the sense of place, really? Is it by design that we see this in your building?
I understand you. Okay. In my case, I think I need a strong idea at the beginning. So I'm looking around, and this idea has to resound with use and with this history, or with topography, or with landscape, and so on. And if this is the case, I'm interested. If I cannot get really excited about what we would maybe be able to do, and have a vision of an emotional feeling about it, I'm not starting.
You don't start.
No.
Have you ever said no to a client saying, your site does nothing to me?
No, if it's just an abstract kind of idea with no emotional promise, I forget it.
Well, I hope more architects can have that strength, really. And that's something about, it's the uncompromising integrity of your buildings, material, structure, craftsmanship. Would you like to tell us a little about the craftsmanship that some of your buildings have ventured in?
Well, I like things. I like artificial things made by human beings. I think it's a great capacity of human beings to develop skills, to do pieces of wood or stone and so on. And there's no difference anymore between art and applied art, and you look at something done by a craftsman, and you say, hey, this is art. Okay, this is art. So these boundaries dissolve, and I think your country is the best example for something like that. We just are farmers over there, but you have these wonderful traditions of making amazing things by hand. Okay, and all hope to God and all goddesses that it doesn't disappear, that you can maintain this and bring this into a new that it has a future, that you bring it into a new kind of economy. So it's not something just dying out. Everybody said too bad that it dies out and so on. So that's a historical thing. But I'm not done. I tell you.
No, I'm not. I'm not rushing you.
Okay. Things done by hand, I think you can feel this. That this has been done by one person or by 5,000 persons. Sometimes the buildings are so big, you can feel a lot of people's work in there. And if I look at a wonderful car, let's say a Rolls Royce or maybe a Mercedes or whatever, I don't get the same feeling like I get when I look at the table my grandfather made. It's different if you assemble pieces and there's a production made by hand. So I love handmade buildings.
But handmade buildings take time. And as long as it takes, but how do you define the length of a project? Do you have clients who get antsy? Does your team sometimes have this pressure of doing something in time? And how do you, as a practicing architect, balance the quality of work and the concrete reality of your vision, but the time it takes to get that right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So have you run out of time on any project?
Yeah, sure. So at the beginning, when I tell the client, I work a little bit like an artist, and artistic work is a process, then the client says, I know. But he doesn't really know. He will find out.
Time and cost. I mean, we all know where that heads with the client.
Yeah, but after when you deliver a building and it's good, after 12 years, already after 7 years, I have never heard anybody say, this is a good building, but it took 7 years to do it. I have never heard this.
Sure.
Once it's there, and its history starts, and what matters is the care which has been put into it. And I guess I'm strong enough to only let go when I think that's the best I can do. Not before.
Which project took you the longest in construction?
It took me a long time to do Los Angeles. I think we're finishing in 2 years, but I think it's sort of like 12 years. But this has a lot of reasons. And here now it has maybe only half of the reason have to do with me, but with the political situation in the US, an extremely clever director, I love director all over America, who knew how to work this out, that there wouldn't be a competition, and that the project would not get into the hands of the donators too early. We say, oh yeah, I like this first prize of the competition, but I have a friend of mine, he can do this much better. And so this is all avoided. This took a long time. And the other thing was, he said, you have to do the new model of an encyclopedic, not of an art museum, but encyclopedic like Victoria and Albert or something. And this should be a model of the museum of the 20th century. So the stakes were high. Sometimes I was trembling, but now it's okay.
But at LACMA, you've actually given the city an urban place in a city like Los Angeles, which is all about motor cars and vehicles. Yeah. You've created a space that would become a public pedestrian plaza almost like a concept of a European plaza in that space. And don't you think that it's this negotiation of public projects in dense cities and creating urban space that probably takes longer in terms of convincing committees? Because that's my next question. We all see you as a very reclusive architect. You're not there on social media. You are seen as this person who is not not very extroverted and
I'm
out
a monk.
there.
I'm a monk.
Almost like a monk. But for that monk, how do you negotiate committees? I mean, I've watched the whole process of the Amsterdam mill land, the redevelopment, where there were so many committees looking at heritage, listing, greens. We have that in Mumbai as well. How does Peter Zumthor negotiate people?
I'm a good negotiator. I can talk well about my work, but sometimes this doesn't help because committees have other interests, and if they're too diverted, I can talk and talk and talk. It doesn't help.
You don't just say, "I am Peter Zumthor."
No, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. So, again, Michael Gold, my director in Los Angeles, he's amazing at this. I said, "Why am I invited so little to the board?" This is for the wealthy people on the board he has there. And so he says, I shouldn't say this, because it's a nice board, but it's how it is. He says, the board I'm doing, If we have a problem in building, and we would talk about in the board, that we have a problem here and there, you, Peter, you would have to deal with 40 different solutions they have for the problems to solve. And this you don't want to hear. I'm doing this, okay, trust me.
So he's negotiating the people?
He is negotiating the board and explains this to them, and also keeps them a little bit distant of the process of architecture.
Well, talking about negotiation, there's also the negotiation between old and new, the interface between old and new. And you have written about it that everything
Can I go? I'm sorry. I would like to say exactly to the other question still.
Yes.
Yeah. I have learned that for each project, we have to make a very good analysis. Who is the client?
True.
And the client, this was simple 40 years ago when I was building a one-family home for the friend. But that's over, right? So the client is always a multi-layered structure. You know this. I know you know exactly. That's why you ask. So the analysis is this structure a partner for us? Where are sitting the really good people? And could it be that somewhere in the structure there's really a bad guy who will, for some reason, always be against what you're doing and then be a little bit political in the sense of choose your battles, find a good way, and so on. But for this, I don't get old enough.
It's never too late, and then there's always time.
True.
But talking about this negotiation sometimes with people, sometimes with cities, also the negotiation between building in a historic context, and especially in the Columba Museum at Cologne, where when there was an old ruin, and most architectural responses to something like this that we've seen in the last 3 decades are create a glass and steel building that sort of tiptoes around it.
Contrast.
Yes, or contrasts the stone and the solidity of it. But your architectural solution was a solid building that encapsulated and almost embraced the ruins into its own fabric. How did you reach that solution, and would you tell us more about it?
This is something I saw in Graubünden in the old houses, not only farmhouses, also castles and so on. You take away the stucco, and you see 4 phases, 6 phases, you know this. So you could see that we call this in German Baumeister, building master. So this Baumeisterlich approach has been also to always create a new whole. I was very impressed when I saw this. That was always the thing. You didn't have a stupid idea. Now I have to see, this is me and all the rest is somebody else. This is not Baumeisterlich. Baumeisterlich is a new whole. And I don't see, maybe I'm only this part of extension there. So that's what I learned there. But what it also needed is the client who liked that.
And the client who believed that bold approach
The
could
clients
work.
in Columba, these three guys, art historians, all of them, they went around to look at the people they wanted to invite to their competition of 170 or 180 entries, because they saw something and they talked. So they came to me, I didn't know them, asked, said, could we talk, could you show us building, we would like to hear about your design philosophy. And they did this with Chipperfield and very good architects there, and that's the key, a sensitivity of the client.
But also, it takes courage to put yourself out there with such a radical design sometimes.
Didn't take any courage at all.
Oh, good.
I tell you, if you see this would be a great approach, then we do it. Yeah. But
Good, you're not on social
I
media.
always said to my people, if we don't win this competition, that's their fault. Their problem.
And I think that defines you, that we see in this world of isms, and we see in this world where more and more, there's a certain style or an ism that most people you can put into boxes. You have valiantly stayed away from all isms. There's nothing that we can put your work into a box, because each time, I for one always thought that your work, there's a solidity to it. And then I see the glass floor and the amoeba shapes at LACMA, which completely change the way what one perceives of your other buildings. And there's a reinvention each time with each building. But you've also inspired a lot of us, and I can say that about this entire audience. What you've inspired us to do is to have the bravery to stay away from these, to keep a practice small. In this world of multinational corporations and large architectural practices that are New York, Milan, Shanghai, and branches, yours is still one atelier, no branches, and it's stayed that way. How did you take that decision? Because normally when an architectural practice grows, you come to a kind of a bend in the road, and there's a fork, and you have to take a decision of growing with the kind of projects that are coming to you, and multiplying and delegating, but you chose a very different and a very singular approach. Would you like to talk to us about the structure of your atelier?
I think early on in my career, I learned that you have to make decisions what you want to do. What is this what you like to do, and what are you setting out? So I remember talks with, let's say, Jacques Herzog. We talked about something on the phone some 40 years or 30 years ago. And then he said, this was early in my career, by the way, are you going to become a professor? Yes or no? So, I don't know. Nobody will ask me. They will ask you soon. You should know.
They will ask you soon.
You should know before. Before they call you, you should know, do you want to be a professor or not? And the same thing is the model of building, okay? I then decided to work as an author. Me, I'm the author of my buildings. Not a big firm, a structure of a big firm, like let's say SOM or whatever, or Foster or so, which have managed to make a very good structure of coming up with a good quality all the time. But it's not personal, right? It's a product, okay? So people have come after my name got a little bit known. People have come and said, we could make a big firm. You could make a lot of money with your name, okay? If you do this and this and this and you become this I never wanted to. My word is maybe authorship.
Yes. So authorship, and the way you see your work, which means that each product, each building that comes out of your atelier bears your unique stamp. And for that reason, you chose not to scale up to this level, that you don't get involved with each product.
Architects can work like artists. That's possible.
Oh, I completely and absolutely agree.
Okay.
But that's,
So when the artist is dead, no more Picassos.
True.
Okay.
Okay, but in hindsight, would you pick two buildings or one building that if you think back in your body of work that you would have approached differently or done something different when you look back? And that takes me to another question, but I'll leave you right now with just this.
With the first one.
With the first one.
The first one, the answer is no.
So not
no
one
regrets.
building.
No.
Not one, construction.
No, honestly, I mean, you do the thing, and I look at the thing, I look at this, then my heart jumps. What a wonderful moment when I made these drawings, and this is gonna add hard. Maybe I knew 30% of the real thing we're doing when I do this drawing at the time, but it's all in it. I mean, and this is always like I told you, only with this warm core or whatever emotional core, I can go on. And looking back, I would say certain projects are typical for the 80s and where I was in the 80s, okay? So in the 80s, my atelier, not the first one, you see a strong influence of American art, okay? It's monolithic, it's strong, and so it tries to make a clear statement. And this, you would understand if you were there, this was a statement against this sort of traditional, cheap chalet architecture in Switzerland. So everybody they blew up chalets to gigantic sizes and so on.
Oh, we do that in Delhi and Rajouri Garden and Patpatganj.
Okay,
we do fake chalets like not the Swiss can.
Okay. Yeah, so this was actually a little bit a manifest against this. And so this was, at the time, absolutely necessary. And I made a new atelier 25 years later. And I think it's more relaxed.
Is it more relaxed in your
think so,
atelier
yeah.
now? You think so, or the people who work with you
I
think
don't know
so?
what the other people think. So I think you could see it's not a manifest. It's more I am. That's okay, the way I am.
So coming to two things, two projects that are not yet built, that you wish they could be built or they should have been built, the two that got away.
A great building we couldn't build was for the Atacama, a hotel for the Atacama Desert. We went there, we looked at this, and with the client, a rich banker from Chile. When he saw it for the first time in Altenstein, he had the tears in his eyes. He was so
moved.
He looked at this. And then we started to work together until and one evening he says, in Santiago, he says, tomorrow my friend comes. He just studied at the Harvard Business School and blah, 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 and he is coming. And then a week later, the project was dead. Okay, so this I would like to, maybe without a Harvard business specialist. This would be a great project to do.
Would you agree to move that building to another location, or you would want just that site and just that building?
No, I cannot move. Ideas never die. But new place, new interpretation of such an idea. So there is also a wooden hotel. I was designing a small one with 20, 30, 40 for a mountain in the Engadine mountain area. And there was an opposition in the village then this So this idea of sculptural form standing alone there in the mountains, covered with special kind of wooden shingles, so you could make beautiful shapes and forms inside and outside. This was amazing. So I was terrible not to be able to do this. But just recently, there is a chance that I could do something like that somewhere else. Believe it, it's very difficult to build in Switzerland in open areas because this has been done too much, so I agree that. But I don't want to suffer from these landscape things.
And coming to the next question, if there were two sites in the world or two types of buildings, two projects that you would want to do, like what would be your dream project?
One of them I already told you. I'm trying to.
But you have to tell everyone
I
else.
can tell you also. I would like, for instance, if somebody would be interested to make make a house for traditional Indian music with different performance, possibilities of performance, auditoriums, big or small, maybe also a collection of the instruments, and then maybe also an institution which gives compositions for old instruments, so picking up on or continuing this, not maybe, how to call this, popular songs, but also. Anyway, so this would be something I could hear, using wood, but it would have to be not in a city, because cities are too noisy for such a project. Such a project needs an approach of silence, a real approach of silence, so that when you go there, you can hear the music. So think about it.
I think the audience can vote. I would love to see a Peter Zumthor School of Music in Hampi or in the landscape of Ladakh. Anyone who agrees? So, okay, coming to your buildings, emotion is a very strong part of your buildings. But in all these years, and of all the awards that you have won and all the accolades you have received, which is the best compliment you've received for your building from anyone? What is the best, most memorable reaction to or just a reaction to your building?
What comes to my mind now, so there are many really positive reactions. I had a woman once approached me when I was in Cologne, and she said, she was maybe 50, 60, and then she said, I don't want to disturb you, but I have to tell you, whenever I have a problem in my life and I feel bad or so, I come to this building and then I feel much better.
Oh, that's true.
Not bad.
Because buildings have that power.
Yeah.
The power of light, the power of making you feel
Or
good.
somebody wrote to me, a man, my best friend died. And then I went there and looked at this, and this was good for me.
So since we know you've worked on, you are the monk in architecture, if you had to collaborate on a project with any designer, artist from any century of the world, of history, present, past, future, would you collaborate with, and who?
The people I really admire, respect on almost a personal level, like Le Corbusier, or I wouldn't like to collaborate. They're too good. So, or they're just, it doesn't make any sense. And once I would like to collaborate, the truth is, I don't want to collaborate.
You wouldn't want to. Okay, so let's rephrase that. Since you are a self-taught architect, what were the greatest influences, or whose work influenced you or moved you in your growth as an architect?
The first part was growing up in a family of craftsmen where we did everything ourselves, working with my hands as a boy. The second thing was then actually taking this training in my father's little shop factory. And then it was art school Basel, where I learned the art of drawing and looking and using color and mixing color. So, like 1 year, modeled after the focus of the Bauhaus it was, of learning skills, not art. I remember the first day of the professor there, it's like, hey guys, here this is called Kunstgewerbeschule, but forget the word Kunst. Nothing to do with Kunst. You're learning how to look now, and you learn, and so skills. This was very good, and then 10 years of looking in this canton. I worked on the preservation of village things, doing inventories. This was also very good, and at the same time, the influence of American minimal art, the impact of Joseph Beuys, then there was the land art, and then all of that, this was amazing, and then like Swiss architects there, we were young, we didn't look at the old guys, that didn't interest us, so we had our own publication, and we talked and so on, before we then made all our own things. It was an exciting time, and all of a sudden Aldo Rossi was teaching in Zurich. So this was so it was like nervous. I had this when I went to New York, but not because of architecture. I was nervous about other things.
About New York, the traffic.
Yeah, right. No, it wasn't the traffic.
But if we see your buildings and the materials that you've used, when you talk about building by hand, and even the way you've used material, for example, the way you've used wood and timber in the Swiss pavilion, or the way in the Vals you've used sort of this precision of almost a precision to create an imprecise stonework at the Vals, and your work.
To create what?
Where there's a lot of work and calculation to create something that doesn't look like it has a lot of precision, but there's a lot of precision in the process to reach that look of stone that you've built. Yeah. And the same with your rammed concrete and construction. Yeah. How much of this is pre-decided at the drawing level, and how radically does it change with mock-ups and samples? And what is that process with you? From the idea of doing this with timber, but the pre-stressed steel members, or just the labor-intensive filling of stone, how much does the process change between conception, the drawing, and the actual product?
The process can change, even though there are not so many processes we can use, I think. There's not an endless number of construction methods and so on. But what I don't like to lose is this emotional core of the first idea. So this has to adapt, but it still has to be there. And to this emotional core usually belong a main material of a sound of three materials.
Three materials.
Usually it's three, not one, but three materials where I can say this, and this heavy, and this is light, or whatever. So, yeah, heavy, light, dark, low, tall, and so these are the great things in architecture.
Stone, water, and light. So three, which need not be materials of construction, but just three materials.
Yeah, so I think sometimes when you talk about it like now, architecture is easy. It's light, it's heavy, it's long, and so on. Yeah.
But do you get impatient in the process? Do you have times when there's frustration, or are you just very patient with working that out and just?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No,
oh, good.
No.
Okay, good.
It's,
So you're really not God then. It's all right. Okay. So the other one was, how much time do you spend for a normal building? What is your engagement with the site? First, the landscape. What is your engagement with the landscape before the design process, and then the site during the design process? What is the way you like to work with a project?
You make a difference between the landscape and the site. What do you mean?
As in, since the context is sometimes larger than the site. So there's a way that you read the building or the site or the landscape before you decide your design, and then once construction is ongoing, how do you like to engage with the site works?
No, the first idea should resound with the site and the landscape and the place it is, and with the culture, and so on and so on. I was always saying in LA, at the end there should be something South American in the whole thing there, which reminds you in way who was there first before the Europeans came and made Los Angeles and so on. So I think we're getting there, that you feel ancient culture. You could not even maybe fix it where it is, but or that you. So Niemeyer is also. I like Niemeyer a lot, but in Switzerland you cannot do a Niemeyer building. Okay. Absolutely impossible. You need a big horizon,
yes.
And you need this culture. And so a compliment, this is an anecdote. So Michael Goldman, the director, a month ago or so, on telephone, he says, they took away the scaffolding there over the entrance there going up. And this is the first time I saw something which I did not expect from the plans. This huge roof overhanging the whole entrance situation, that this is bigger than Niemeyer. Sounds like
that
a compliment for me. Yeah. So this you could not do. This needs a long vast and a long answer. That it.
And it almost seems like it's floating on glass because you don't see anything heavy on the base at all. Yeah. So what? Right now, in the next couple of years, hopefully the LACMA project would be coming to completion. And
in 2 years it will be finished.
And Basel as well.
Then you can go there and tell me whether you like it, okay?
Yes, and the Basel Museum as well.
As well.
So what are the next upcoming projects that your atelier is currently working on that we'll get to see?
We made a design for a 200 apartments in 80-meter tall building for Antwerp, and in the junction between the city of the 18th century, and then comes the part, old docks and so on, and this is the new south, they call it. And there at the hub, there's our building. They like it, the city likes it, and so on. Now we are asked to stop working. And first I did not understand why. I said, we have so much to do. Let's go on, and so on, because also the client likes it. But they put now a price on the building. Okay, they go out for bidding and see whether they want to pay this much money, and they can ask for the rent they need, and so on. It's a financial operation. So then I told the guy there, said, now I understand. When I think and talk to you, sorry that I did not understand why you have to stop. Then he said, don't feel sorry, I never told you. So it's financial things, you have to understand these things.
So that would be the next project that your team is currently engaged in?
There's something quite nice coming up in Qatar.
And are you coming further towards India, or we've managed to peel you off Europe and bring you closer?
Let's see. I'm going to look at something in China also.
In China. But given the fact that we in India were sort of bedazzled. I think when I was graduating, that was the 90s was all about copying the West, and the 2000 remained that. And then we had little practices looking at sustainability. And when we talk today, I think the time, on a much larger level, Indian architects are realizing that the European glass box concept will not work in India, because we've had enough of those.
It doesn't work in my place either.
In Europe either. And how is your practice engaging with exploring sustainability in your projects and in the past and today? So how
this I do like a monk.
This you do like a monk.
Calmly looking what's being said and what's being done, and examining these kind of things. I mean, if the Swiss government tells you we should not have open fireplaces in our homes anymore because there's carbon dioxide coming out of the chimney while all the airplanes are going through, which don't pay any taxes for their gas or whatever. So, I mean, let's keep the common sense. So that's what I try to do. I cannot change the world with my small practice, but I want to behave well. But since I always used wood and stone, and so I wasn't so wrong.
Yes, you were always sustainable.
Yeah.
But it's,
Yeah.
So which is, as a designer, not the clients and not the funding, what would be your most challenging project architecturally, that when we see your body of work, which one was the most challenging for you personally?
Technically very challenging was the building I designed and started to build in Berlin, Topography of Terror.
Topography of Terror.
Which we started to build in a horizontal manner, adding layer after layer after layer. So for political reasons, they took this away. For 10 years, for 5 years, or for the moment, they blamed me. But we know this as architects that sometimes you are the guy, you need somebody to blame. But actually, for political reasons, they said, we don't need this building. We already made our duties. We can now become the capital of Berlin. We did the Peter Eisenman blocks there and so on, so that's it. No, the international community will not ask a new commemorable building from us, so let's keep this small, and let's kick this Zumthor building out, okay? So they did it, and they destroyed the first towers, and also the machine on tracks, which we constructed, and so this it was the most challenging thing. And, you know, sometimes I think maybe it wouldn't have worked. Maybe the rain would have come in from all the sides, and I have no idea. No, I think this was really challenging, because nobody has ever tried to build a building not bottom up, but like a tunnel.
Right. Mm-hmm. And even, I mean, talking about buildings bottom up, but the Kunsthaus, which became like a vertical structure that in most of your buildings you see a horizontality that is sort of the primary element. How did you negotiate the light, and could you tell us about the materiality that you chose for that building, which was so different from what normally one expects from yours?
At the time, this was very new. So you have to see, then was the time of the white cube.
Yes.
So maybe you had this, or so this was the white cube. The white cube was pure modernism. And there was an idea, every piece of art looks good on a white wall. And the other thing is, architects are doing too much. We don't want to see their forms. We want to concentrate on art, which I understand. But in the materiality, I think they weren't right that this went to a white box which could be made out of cardboard or whatever, or sheetrock or something. So then I said, I'm going to do a simple building, quiet building, but it has to have a strong bone character, because good art will look better in a strong building, okay? not a building which makes a lot of kind of things, but really concentrating what it has to do. And then the director there I had there, he said, okay, you can have the opening in concrete. We have it in exposed concrete. But as soon as the first artist says he wants to paint this white, the whole building will be white inside. Okay. It never happened.
So it's still concrete.
It's
right?
in concrete, yeah. Okay. And the artists love it. Even concrete haters. I have had talk with a woman I like, an artist I like a lot, and I know she hates concrete. And we had a talk in there for 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And she said, yep, here I like it. Anyway, this was this time. And it was also the time to deal with the light. So there were ideas that light could come down and be reflected with some kind of planes of reflectors into the house and so. So this is a longer story. I thought I'm not going to go there, but the first idea when I'm down there from the place where I live, in the Alps, down to the Lake of Constance, Bodensee, and I saw that the light changes. It's only 200 kilometers, but there you had this misty light on the lake, completely different from this clear, sharp light we have up in the mountains. And I remember me saying to my wife, who came with me then, I say, this is the light which has to be in this museum, okay? And somehow it's there now.
Somehow.
Took some time, but it's there.
But each of your buildings just has a different approach to light. Almost each one treats light differently or allows light to play with it differently. Okay, one question, which I think the architectural community here is also, it's something that we've been all thinking individually. But does an architect have a role that's larger than just their practice? Do architects have a responsibility which is beyond their individual practice? And given the world today, given the not just the geopolitics, but everything else that we see in between, what do you see as the future of architects and the future of architecture?
You started with the interesting, smaller question. Can I start with the small part?
Please.
Yeah, I do think that we play a role with what we do, because the things we do, other people have to look at for 100 years or for 50 years or whatever. And one of the big problems at the moment is the building trade is commercial. It has to do with making money or living, and so I'm not against making money. I'm against this exclusiveness of economy-driven projects. And we all know this. We have lost public space.
Yes.
So the old farmers, I mean, they had to do, in our houses, there is a fountain, and you've seen all the images, the houses around. The women came to do their washing there, and the cows came there and so on. So there are many reasons to make public space. There's also the reason of the Pope in Rome making a huge thing to expect all these pilgrims.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, but we lost this. So in Switzerland, they make roads, and then they put infrastructure there, and then each Swiss makes a fence and builds his house there. That's the better version, and the other one, it's just a block. And the block doesn't really care about what's left and right, and so it's another block and another block. No public space. So this is such a loss. This is such a loss. When I see you have this amazing, I will always talk about this from now on, your long wall on the sea.
A long wall,
with body after body after body. How long is this? A couple of miles.
Yeah, this is just to give you all a background. Since Peter was staying at the Taj, every time we were driving him from the airport or back, it was along Marine Drive. And towards sunset, he would just see a wall of human beings sitting on Marine Drive looking at the sea. But that's because in a city like Mumbai, we are starved for personal space. And our real estate is high, apartments are small. So people go out to just breathe in fresh air and just for their, and this becomes, it's like the Marine Drive is like Bombay's living room. It's the salon for people to come, meet other people,
we should
have a
have more
conversation.
things like that. Okay.
And that's why we as a city are so possessive about whatever little open space we have. And
my potential client in China said, "What are you doing?" Then he said, "People in our big cities, they earn enough, and they always have to work, and they feel lonely. So I make recreation things out 2 or 3 in the nature, and I maintain a cultural program, so they can come there. But I like this idea. But what a society that we have to make a new place somewhere else to be human.
absolutely.
You don't have this yet. I can see this. I was with B. Joy there with the water tank and so this area.
Banganga.
Yeah, this was amazing. This is life. I like that a lot.
Finally, my one question, Peter Zumthor, what do you see as your legacy?
For some 10, 20 years, I can see that I'm a point of reference for a way of working. So there are a lot of, every day there are people from all over the world in my hamlet there on the street, so that sometimes I have to look out of the door whether I can cross the street, you know. So I have to wait until the groups of architecture tourists are gone, and I can all go on without having to do a photo. So this is a compliment. I seem to give hope to young people that it is possible to work the way like Peter Zumthor works. So I hope this legacy will stay.
All I can say is, as an architect and as someone who has seen your work and been inspired by it, your legacy would probably live through many, many generations of architects. And thank you for being Peter Zumthor, and thank you for giving us some of the most inspirational architectural pieces that we've seen around us. So thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maitreyi Shirolkar, and I'm the Diplomatic Affairs Officer at the Consulate General of Switzerland in Mumbai. On behalf of the entire Swiss network in India, who is very pleased and honored to bring the one and only Mr. Peter Zumthor to India in the framework of our public diplomacy campaign, Switzerland and India 75, Success Stories to be Continued, I would like to express our sincere gratefulness to Mr. Zumthor, Ms. Abha Narayan Lamba, and to each and every one of you. I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to all the sponsors of the Switzerland India 75 campaign, our event partners, the Royal Opera House and the Avid Learning teams, and all our colleagues whose unwavering support has been instrumental in making this program a resounding success. As India and Switzerland celebrate 75 years of diplomatic relations, this dialogue will further promote creative exchanges and collaborations in the field of architecture and design. Today's special event represents the long-standing Indo-Swiss relations that go far beyond and much deeper than diplomacy. Let us continue to cherish and nurture the relationships that have brought us here today and weave more such success stories together.